Rain had been falling since sunset. By the time Haytham reached the apartment building, the street outside was almost empty, and the pavement glistened beneath the weak orange streetlights. The building stood at the far end of the block, like something forgotten by time. An old brick structure, dark windows, a narrow entrance, a hallway light above the door flickering every few seconds. It wasn't much, but it was cheap. For someone who had just moved to the city and was already struggling with rent, cheap was enough. The landlord barely said a word when handing over the key. An older man with tired eyes and a low voice. "4th floor, Unit 4B." That was all he said. The hallway smelled of damp wood and old paint. Every step Haytham took across the floorboards was answered by a slow groan from the timber beneath him. The apartment itself was small. A narrow kitchen, a modest bedroom, a bathroom with cracked tiles, and a deep closet built into the wall directly opposite the bed. For the first week, everything felt normal. He settled into a simple routine. Wake up, go to work, come home late, eat, sleep. The only sounds at night were the usual ones. The pipes knocking softly in the walls, the floorboards creaking, the faint whistle of wind through the old windows. Old buildings make noise. That thought became his comfort, until the first note appeared. One morning, Haytham walked into the kitchen and suddenly stopped. A yellow sticky note sat in the middle of the counter. "Buy milk." The handwriting looked familiar. Too familiar. It was his. At least, it looked exactly like his handwriting. He stared at it for a long moment, trying to remember when he had written it. Nothing? No memory? Maybe he wrote it half asleep. Maybe he forgot. He crumpled the note and threw it away. The next morning, there was another one. "Take out the trash." Again in his handwriting. Again, no memory. This time, something cold settled in his chest. He lived alone. No one else had access to the apartment except the landlord. Still, he tried to ignore it. Stress, lack of sleep, long hours at work. That had to be the reason. But then, on the 4th night, he came home and found another note waiting for him. This one made him freeze. "Stop looking at the closet." Haytham slowly lifted his eyes. The closet door in the bedroom was slightly open, just a narrow black gap. He was sure he had closed it that morning. For several seconds, he stood there listening. The apartment was silent. Then, a slow creak. The closet door moved slightly, as if something behind it had shifted. A chill ran through him. He forced himself to laugh. Old wood, old hinges, nothing more. But that night, sleep didn't come easily. Every sound in the apartment felt louder. The groan of the floor, the knocking of the pipes, and then something else. A faint scratching sound, coming from inside the wall near the closet. He sat upright in bed. The sound stopped. Silence. Then, 3 soft knocks. Tap, 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 from inside the closet. The next morning, Haytham bought a small indoor security camera. At exactly 3:17 a.m. on the footage, Haytham suddenly sat up. His eyes were open, but something felt wrong. His movements were slow, almost mechanical, as if he were sleepwalking. He stood up, then turned toward the far corner of the room. Haytham leaned closer to the screen. His heart nearly stopped. Someone was standing there. A tall figure, perfectly still, half hidden in the darkness. The figure's arm was raised, pointing directly toward the closet. Then suddenly, the footage cut to static. That afternoon, the landlord finally admitted it. 3 tenants lived in Unit 4B before him. None stayed longer than 2 months. One disappeared completely. Every single complaint mentioned the same thing. Notes. Sounds from the closet. Movement in the walls. Hatem returned to the apartment just before sunset. For the first time, the place no longer felt old. It felt occupied. And that night, he decided he was finally going to find out what was inside that closet. The apartment was silent when Hatem returned. Too silent. He slowly opened the closet door. Inside, everything looked normal. Then he ran his hand along the back wall. His fingers suddenly stopped. A seam, almost invisible beneath chipped paint. He pressed against it. The wooden panel gave way with a long, dry creak. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, pitch black. A foul smell rushed out immediately. Dust, mold, and something stale. Like old sweat trapped for years. Hatem switched on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. Blankets, food wrappers, half-empty bottles of water. Someone had been living there, inside the walls, watching him. Then he noticed a notebook lying on the floor. Every page was filled with handwriting, the same handwriting as the notes. His handwriting. But as he turned the pages, something even worse became clear. The first pages were filled with his name, repeated hundreds of times. Hatem, Hatem, Hatem. The intruder had been practicing, perfecting every curve of every letter from Hatem's bills and mail. The later pages were worse. Schedules, observations, leaves for work at 8:15, sleeps at 11:40. The ink on the final page was still fresh. He knows now. At that exact moment, a floorboard creaked behind him. Hatem slowly turned. A man stood in the bedroom doorway. Thin, pale, sunken eyes. His posture was wrong. His shoulders tilted too far forward. His neck bent at an unnatural angle. Then the man spoke in a whisper. "You weren't supposed to find this." The intruder lunged. Hatem grabbed the metal closet rod and swung. The rod struck the intruder across the shoulder, but instead of falling, the man's body twisted in a way that felt deeply wrong, bending sharply before snapping back upright. He smiled, a slow, disturbing smile. Hatem ran. Behind him came fast footsteps, light, almost gliding, like a hunter. He reached the stairwell and slammed the fire door shut. Boom, boom, boom. The metal frame shook. Then, silence. The police arrived, but the man was gone. No fingerprints, no sign of escape. Only the notebook remained, and one final yellow sticky note on the kitchen counter. Fresh ink, still wet. Wrong apartment, wrong person. Weeks later, investigators uncovered that a previous tenant, who looked eerily similar to Hatem, had disappeared without a trace. Hatem was never the target. He was just the next name on a list. The notebook from Hatem's wall ended with one unfinished sentence. "Find the right one next time."